As some of Britain's biggest businesses lobby government over soaring gas costs, the steel industry says there's no immediate help. Businesses aren't covered by the energy price cap. The head of UK Steel says he's baffled the government isn't helping them.
I think if we're headed to a very dark place if the government doesn't step in now, like other countries in the rest of Europe have already stepped in.
With the government so far showing little appetite to intervene, we'll be looking at the economic pressures facing businesses and consumers. Also on the programme. Pig farmers who don't have enough abattoir staff to slaughter their pigs say that UK agriculture has never suffered like this before. Get your flu jab. The NHS launches its biggest ever vaccination campaign against the illness. At least 50 people are killed in a suicide bomb attack in a mosque in the Afghan city of Kunduz.
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2021 to Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov.
And 2 journalists from the Philippines and Russia are awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their fight in defence of free speech.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, they've arrived and the rebuild is already underway. Newcastle's new owners are on Tyneside as the club begins its new era.
Good evening. The UK steel industry has said the government has failed to offer any immediate help to deal with the rising price of gas after a meeting with the Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng this afternoon. The head of UK Steel, which represents the industry, said he was baffled that Mr Kwarteng did not provide solutions during a meeting with leaders of energy-intensive companies which are struggling. The cost of natural gas has been at a record high, and businesses which are not protected by the price cap are already facing large increases in their bills. The watchdog Ofgem warned that householders will see significant rises in prices next spring when the cap on domestic gas costs is due to be reviewed. Here's our business editor, Simon Jack.
It's not just consumers feeling the heat of the gas crisis. Businesses like Pilkington Glass rely on huge quantities of energy to keep the fires burning. But soaring gas prices recently have shocked veterans of heavy industry.
I've been working for Pilkington for 30 odd years, never known anything like it at all. And the impact is literally millions of pounds a month.
Some industries have stopped production. That's not an option here.
A glass furnace runs 24/7, 365 days a year for 20 years. So we literally can't turn it off. If we turned it off and it went cold, we would lose the whole of the production and whole of the factory.
The steel industry has seen production reduced or paused, but the industry warned today that without government help, temporary shutdowns could become permanently damaging.
If we don't see action now, in the days to weeks ahead of us, then what we'll see is those pauses in production that steel makers are having to implement now when the price of steel is high, those will become more frequent, will become longer, and then my concern would be that we'll then see job losses in the steel sector, which would be very bad news not only for the UK steel sector, but for the economy as a whole.
Businesses, unlike consumers, are not protected by an energy price cap, meaning they're bearing the full brunt of a gas price shock. The UK is in a global scramble for energy. This is where we get our gas from currently. Less than a half now comes from declining reserves in the North Sea. 29% through a pipeline from Norway, a little bit, 2% from mainland Europe, and over a fifth now comes in the form of liquefied natural gas in tankers from places like the US, Qatar, Russia. And there is a bidding war for those tankers, and the voracious appetite of China has seen manufacturers there told to pay whatever it takes to make those tankers change course for Asia. That's pushing prices up here at home, where energy concerns of some small businesses are more personal than industrial.
It's not as easy as just putting on another jumper or putting another blanket over their knees. These people are very vulnerable, they're very poorly quite often, and they don't move very often. So they don't have the kind of lifestyles that you and I have where we can just get up and move around a bit. We have to keep them warm, we have to keep them safe. And looking at the energy bills at the moment, it's feeling like a very scary place for us to be at the moment.
Intensive energy users met with the business secretary this afternoon, but no immediate solutions emerged to a crisis that has brutally exposed UK and international reliance on fossil fuels, a month before a major climate summit in Glasgow. Simon Jack, BBC News.
A shortage of abattoir workers has left pig farmers across the UK facing a human disaster, according to the National Farmers Union. Healthy pigs are already having to be destroyed due to a backlog on farms, and the industry is blaming the pandemic and Brexit. The government says it's keeping the situation under review and working closely with the sector. Our correspondent Danny Savage has been following the fortunes of one pig farmer after the BBC spoke to her last week, and he joins us now from Driffield in East Yorkshire. Danny.
Reeta, 600 sows in this barn alone, all of them expecting, and because of the size of litters, that means there's basically 9,500 pigs under this roof. Now, the problem, this is the beginning of the process, but the problem, not enough pigs are going off farm at the other end of the process. Now, the National Farmers Union have said now that this is a human disaster. That is the tone of the messages that farmers are now exchanging with each other, and it's certainly what it's felt like spending a day on this farm here today.
It's been a busy week for Kate Moore, who's passionate about the welfare of her animals, but terrified she'll soon have to cull some of them. She's banging the drum for pig farmers.
Why do you say that, Kate?
This morning she was outside doing a live TV interview while her mum and sisters watched in the kitchen.
Come and speak to me, Boris Johnson. Have the guts to stand up and talk to us.
Go girl, go girl.
But behind the supportive smiles, there is a growing sense of despair.
We are struggling so much, and all we are asking for is some help.
Did she sum up the tensions?
Yeah, you can see. She said exactly what the problem is and why it's so heartbreaking. I'm a really optimistic person, but my God, this past week has really, well, longer than that, has We're farmers to feed people. It's a job. You know, that's what we do day in, day out, and we work bloody hard for it as well. And I am not killing pigs for no reason. No way.
So these pigs are averaging about 100 kilos. If they get to 105 kilos, then basically the value of them is halved, basically.
Unlike beef cattle, pigs have a small window of time in which to be sold. Leave it too long and they're too heavy and too big for the retailers.
The reality is that we will actually have to pay to get rid of these pigs, for them to go into landfill or to be burned. We will pay for them. We will not get anything for these pigs.
Another key factor is that these pens are full, and there'll soon be no more room to put pigs that are coming through the system. And when they run out of space, that's when they'll have to start culling healthy animals.
The government says it understands the challenges the pig industry is facing and says it's working closely with the sector, keeping the situation under review. But its call to make the industry more attractive to UK workers is frustrating here.
Everybody that works for us is local and British. I am all for Boris Johnson's quote of getting British people in British jobs. I'm for it. But you know what? There won't be a job. There won't be an agricultural industry for these kids to come and work into it.
The family on this farm says the situation must improve in the next fortnight. Danny Savage, BBC News, Driffield.
Let's go to Westminster this evening and speak to our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake. Jonathan, worker shortages, gas prices, there's a whole host of different economic pressures on the government going into the winter.
Yes, the government is under pressure on a number of fronts. The industry urging government to intervene. Labour accusing the Prime Minister of refusing to take responsibility for these problems. If you take the example of pig farmers, which we saw in Danny's report there, some in government are urging the Prime Minister to act and say that this problem could be easily fixed by relaxing the requirements around the English language for the visas which are needed for people to come in and fill the vacancies that are there and ease the backlog. The trouble is that just wouldn't sit right with Boris Johnson's big theme at the moment of making the UK economy less reliant on foreign labour. As one minister put it to me, that would be politically difficult right now. But Downing Street has drafted in a senior industry figure to be a new supply chain advisor. Sir David Lewis, the former Tesco boss, will advise Boris Johnson and others and on how to fix these problems in the short and long term. But I'm told we shouldn't expect any big changes in the government's approach, so it seems whether it's warnings of extended shutdowns in steel production or a mass cull of pigs, Downing Street's willing for the sectors of the economy to endure short-term pain for what it hopes will be long-term gain.
OK, Jonathan, many thanks. Jonathan Blake there. Let's take a look now at the UK's latest coronavirus figures. The government data shows that there were 36,060 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. On average, 35,185 new cases were reported per day in the last week. 6,763 people were in hospital with coronavirus across the UK yesterday. There are 127 deaths. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. 108 deaths were announced on average every day in the past week. 85.4% of the population aged 12 or over have had their first dose of a vaccine, and 78.4% have had both doses. More than 40 million people across the UK are being offered a flu vaccine this year in the NHS's biggest campaign against the illness. Health officials are worried because this will be the first winter that COVID and flu will be in full circulation at the same time. Research shows that those infected with both viruses are more than twice as likely to die as someone with COVID alone. Here's our medical editor, Fergus Walsh.
Don't forget flu. With all the focus on COVID, it will be easy to underestimate influenza. So how dangerous is flu? In the past 5 years in England, deaths have averaged around 11,000 each winter, but can be double that.
However, health experts warn that this winter we could see high levels of flu activity alongside rising cases of COVID-19.
Last winter, social distancing meant there was almost no flu around, but there's concern that people could get the virus and be infected with COVID at the same time.
It's because of this significant risk to individuals of co-circulation, so the circulation together of both COVID and flu, and the likelihood that that will cause more serious disease and people are more likely to go to hospital.
So who can get a free flu vaccine? It's more than 40 million people, a record number, including the over 50s, younger people with certain conditions, if you're pregnant, as well as health and care workers, and children aged 2 to 16 who'll be offered a nasal spray vaccine. If you're eligible for a free flu vaccine on the NHS, you can book an appointment at many local pharmacies. GP surgeries will also be contacting patients.
You might feel a sharp scratch.
As you can see, it's quick, easy, and pretty painless. How effective is the flu jab? Well, every year the vaccine is updated to protect against several flu strains, but predicting which ones to choose has been hard this year as cases have been so low. But getting vaccinated is the best way to protect yourself.
Well, it does take 2 or 3 weeks to build your full immunity to the flu vaccine once you've had it. So it's really important to try and get it as early in the season as possible. So when you get to the peak season of flu, you'll already be protected.
Flu jab in one arm, COVID booster in the other. More than 30 million of us, like this care worker in Aberdeen, will be offered a third COVID shot as well as a flu vaccine, sometimes at the same appointment, in a bid to keep both viruses at bay this winter. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
The time is nearly 6:15, our top story this evening. As some of Britain's biggest businesses lobby government over soaring gas costs, the steel industry says there is no immediate help. And still to come.
Your Royal Highness.
Mummy.
Family are all gathered in the drawing room.
We speak to the star of Spencer, the new movie that looks at Princess Diana's relationship with the royal family.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News channel, a huge match tonight for Wales. We'll look ahead to their World Cup qualifier against the Czech Republic. They're without Gareth Bale, but Aaron Ramsey returns to lead the side.
right to freedom of expression has been recognised by this year's Nobel Peace Prize, which has been awarded to two journalists known for their hard-hitting investigations which have angered their country's powerful elites and leaders. Maria Ressa from the Philippines and Dmitry Muratov from Russia have both faced significant threats. The committee commended their work, saying that independent and fact-based journalism serve to protect against the abuse of power and lies. Holby reports.
For the first time since 1935, the Peace Prize goes to journalists for their battle to tell the truth at great personal risk.
To Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov for their efforts to safeguard freedom of expression, which is a precondition for democracy and lasting peace.
Dmitry Muratov is a Russian journalist who's taken a stand against authoritarian rule. Today he dedicated the award to 6 colleagues who, he said, were murdered for their work.
Ани Политковской, Юрия Щекочихина, Игоря Домникова, Насти Бабуровой, Стаса Маркелова, Наташи Стемировой.
The prize, he said, belonged to them. Their paper, Novaya Gazeta, has been highly critical of President Putin and Russia's ruling elite. Its investigations have exposed electoral fraud, such as the stuffing of ballot boxes, as well as official corruption and police violence.
I don't know what effect this Nobel Award will have on censorship of the media here in Russia, with many investigative journalists being accused of being foreign agents.
Maria Ressa from the Philippines is the other winner, a woman described by the Nobel Committee as fearless. She's faced criminal charges and death threats. Her work has exposed state abuses under the controversial President Rodrigo Duterte, in particular the extrajudicial killings that have come with his deadly war on drugs. Thousands of people, mostly from poor communities, have been murdered. Today, Maria Ressa spoke of the vital importance of telling the truth.
When you don't have facts, you don't have truth, you don't have trust. Trust is what holds us together to be able to solve the complex problems our world is facing today. So when you attack the media, oftentimes it's about shooting the messenger.
2 messengers in the spotlight today as the Nobel Committee says press freedoms are necessary for both democracy and peace, but are under threat around the world. Holby, BBC News.
At least 50 people have been killed and more than 100 are injured after a suicide bomb attack on a mosque in the Afghan city of Kunduz. It is the deadliest assault since US forces left. Our correspondent Sikandar Kamani is in Islamabad for us. And Sikandar, tell us more about what happened.
Well, this blast took place at around 1:30 in the afternoon in the northeastern city of Kunduz as worshippers were gathering for Friday prayers, and the mosque was very busy. We understand there were around 300 people inside the mosque at the time that the suicide bomber blew himself up, causing utter devastation. As you say, it's believed that more than 50 people were killed. Now, in the last hour or so, the local branch of the Islamic State group, ISK, has claimed responsibility for the bombing. They've repeatedly launched attacks in the past, as was this one, targeting Afghanistan's Shia minority. Now, IS are also fierce rivals of the Taliban, and in recent weeks, although IS is still much less powerful than the Taliban, they've launched a campaign of bombing attacks targeting Taliban fighters. That's largely in the east of the country, at times as well in and around Kabul. This attack in the north of Afghanistan, apparently committed by a member of the Uyghur ethnic group, represents a worrying escalation. It suggests that their influence is expanding.
Sikandar, thank you. Sikandar Kamani there. The former Northern Ireland Secretary James Brokenshire has died at the age of 53. The Conservative MP for Old Bexley and Sidcup was first diagnosed with lung cancer in 2018 and stood down from ministerial duties earlier this year when a tumour returned. His family described him as a brilliant government minister, a dedicated constituency MP and, most importantly, a loving father, devoted husband and faithful friend. James Brokenshire had been an MP since 2005 and served as both Northern Ireland Secretary and Housing Secretary under Theresa May. She paid tribute to him as an outstanding public servant, a talented minister and a loyal friend. And Boris Johnson called Mr Brokenshire the nicest, kindest and most unassuming of politicians, while also being extraordinarily effective. Tributes to the MP James Brokenshire, who's died at the age of 53. 9 people in Northern Ireland are now facing charges in connection with the death of the journalist Lyra McKee, who was shot by the Republican paramilitary group, the New IRA, in Londonderry during rioting in 2019. Those charged have been linked to a hardline political party called CIRU. Police say it's the political voice of the New IRA, which was formed in 2012. They've warned of its attempts to recruit and radicalise young people. Our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy has this report.
This is the public face of what remains of militant dissident republicanism in Northern Ireland. A march organised by the political party CIRU, who reject the peace agreement which brought an end to decades of violence and see themselves as the true continuation of a radical struggle to bring about a united Ireland. Police investigating the death of Lyra McKee have recently arrested a number of their members.
Whilst it's not true to say that everybody that's associated with CIRU is associated with the New IRA, there was a crossover in terms of some of that membership.
This paramilitary style kind of display you may think looks like more of a throwback to Northern Ireland's past. But for many supporters of CIRU, in their eyes, the conflict continues. They also hope to inspire the next generation to continue the fight.
At least a dozen people linked to CIRU are now facing charges for rioting, bomb-making and murder. Security sources have previously told the BBC the man seen here in the green jacket, Thomas Ashmellan, is in the New IRA's leadership. Lyra McKee was shot when a New IRA gunman fired towards police during rioting in Derry. The dissident group believes the use of violence is justified to resist what it sees as British rule in Northern Ireland and continues to try and carry out gun and bomb attacks. Some of those charged in connection with the death of Lyra McKee have been linked with CIRU's youth wing, known as Eastenders.
How do you think these groups attract young people?
In terms of how they continue to attract people to this cause, I think what they do is they give young men in particular a place to belong. And I think that sense of belonging is attractive to young men that have few other opportunities in life almost to prove themselves.
The youth of this struggle and our movement here is growing, willing and ready.
Over the past year, the groups held protests in support of New IRA prisoners in jail and stepped up its efforts to attract young people through recruitment videos on social media, aiming to appeal to a generation born long after Northern Ireland's darkest days of violence. Many of those who joined the old Provisional IRA during its armed campaign turned away from violence with the Good Friday Agreement in the 1990s.
Some of these guys who were in the New IRA would have been in the Provisional IRA with you 30, 40 years ago. What motivates them to continue?
There's no semblance of strategic thinking there, but there is a belief in the physical force tradition, that any Irish person has the right to take up arms against the British while the British are here. It's a very marginal ideological niche, but it exists.
How do you feel when you see young people today attracted to that cause that you once fought?
I think it's very sad. They're guided by antiquated ideology, which has no relevance in today's world. Because the people going to jail today will be in for a very long time.
CIRU has always denied any involvement with violence. In a statement, the group told us it believes the recent arrests and charges of its members is an attempt to suppress republicanism and that it will not be deterred in pushing forward its ideology. Police say those in the New IRA continue to pose a serious threat, particularly to their own communities. Emma Vardy, BBC News.
The BBC has reached a financial settlement with a graphic designer who was asked by reporter Martin Bashir to produce fake bank statements for his interview with Princess Diana in 1995. Matt Wiesler was sidelined by the BBC after raising concerns about the fake documents. In a statement, the BBC apologised to Mr Wiesler and his family and said he had acted with complete integrity. The Metropolitan Police says that Baroness Casey of Blackstock will lead an independent review into the force's culture and standards following the murder of Sarah Everard. Commissioner Dame Cressida Dick announced the appointment after earlier this week setting out plans for the independent and far-reaching review to also look at the force's leadership, recruitment, vetting, training and communications. Now, she was one of the most photographed figures of the late 20th century. Diana, Princess of Wales, remains a continuing source of intense fascination nearly a quarter of a century after her death. Now, a new film, Spencer, has just had its UK premiere at the London Film Festival. It looks at the strained relationship between the late princess, her husband Prince Charles and the royal family. Our entertainment correspondent Lizo Mazimba spoke to the star of the film, Kristen Stewart.
3 days. That's it.
It's set over Christmas 1991, a period when Diana felt trapped by the royal family. Taking on the role was empowering, says Kristen Stewart.
To play her, even though it was sad and tumultuous, ironically, I felt taller. I felt like somebody who could lead with love and make people feel good, and it's really contagious. It comes right back at you.
Do you think I got delayed by someone?
Oh, come on, come on. They are circling us.
It seems they're circling just me.
Performers always feel pressure playing real-life figures. It's an even greater sense of responsibility for someone like Diana.
I felt such love for her and still do, and you know, in a way that isn't. Without implying like a kind of developed spirituality, I felt her. I wanted to protect her.
There is no future. Past and the present are the same thing.
She is someone who many feel was exploited throughout her life, and now there are still things that are making money from her. Do people who think that a film like this is perhaps at best unnecessary and at worst exploitative have a point?
We came to this with love. Like we truly, first foot forward is always trying to understand somebody that we love. The negotiation between art and commerce is a vast subject. I believe in art. I believe in trying to get closer to other people through it.
They know everything. They don't.
There's still almost 6 months to go, but Kristen Stewart is already striding well ahead of her Oscar Best Actress rivals. Lizo Mazimba, BBC News.
Time now for a look at the weather. Here's Chris Fawkes. Chris, a grey old day in London. Any sign of brighter skies?
Well, we've had a real mixture of weather actually around. You're dead right. We've seen a lot of cloud here in London and the southeast generally. Some of us have seen some sunshine, but Scotland and Northern Ireland have had a weather front now for the last couple of days. They've just been bringing more rain, and it will eventually budge actually as we head into the weekend. But still, we have had some decent breaks in the cloud. Northern England, North Yorkshire there, Scarborough seeing some lovely sunny weather. And again, it's been very warm for October. Temperatures reached 21 degrees Celsius in a few spots. Bridlington, one of those places. That compares with the average of this time of year of 14. So 7 Celsius warmer than it should be during this stage of October. Now, a satellite picture shows where we've seen the best of the breaks. A few for Northern Ireland, a few for Northern Scotland, Northern England and North East Wales having the best of it. But look at this, down towards the southeast. We're starting to see some breaks in the cloud come into Kent and the coastline of East Anglia. That's because we've got a little cold front running in here, and behind that, the air is turning fresher. That's really significant because that's going to kind of kill off the cloud, and you'll have much more in the way of sunshine across parts of England for tomorrow. Indeed, overnight tonight, that cloud will begin to melt away from East Anglia and the southeast. But southwest England, Wales, Northern England could get an odd spot of drizzle, quite murky, mist and fog patches. Rain for Northern Ireland and Scotland again, and if anything, the rain turns a bit heavier here, so we could see some localised surface water flooding building in. A mild night. Tomorrow, this weather front slowly starts to push away from the northwest, so finally you get something a bit drier across the far northwest of the UK, but rain starting to edge into the far north of Northern England and North Wales. Lots more in the way of sunshine, East Anglia, most of southern England and the Midlands, and it's still very mild. Temperatures high teens, perhaps the low 20s in the warmest areas. The second half of the weekend sees our Scottish and Northern Ireland weather front, if you like, slowly slipping southwards across England and Wales. Just a lump of cloud, an odd spit of rain, nothing significant, and for most of us Sundays a bright day with lots of sunshine. There'll be a few showers across the northwest of Scotland where we'll have fairly blustery winds, and you'll notice those temperatures easing down, 12 to 15 for many, still warm though across the south with temperatures 18 in London and maybe a 20 still in Cardiff. However, once that strip of clouds through, that cold front, we'll start to see those temperatures coming back a little bit closer to average for the time of year. Now, there will be a lot of dry weather next week as high pressure tends to build in. The exception really is Scotland, where on Monday we'll see the winds pick up for a time and there'll be more general outbreaks of rain. But really, that's about it. Through the rest of the week, high pressure starts to dominate and we'll see those temperatures getting close to average for the time of year. London, about 14 or 15 degrees is right. You'll see those temperatures just easing back for all of us. So, a couple of warm days, much more sunshine though to come for many across England as we go through tomorrow. Rita.
Thank you very much, Chris. And a reminder now of our top stories. As some of Britain's biggest businesses lobby government over soaring gas costs, the steel industry says there's no immediate help.
I think if we're headed to a very dark place if the government doesn't step in now, like other countries in the rest of Europe have already stepped in.
And get your flu jab. The NHS launches its biggest ever vaccination campaign against the illness. Well, that's all from the BBC News at 6, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.